So again, welcome, guys. My name is Ade Bakare, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the essential knowledge and skills for corporate instructional designers. That's really going to be the focus of today's presentation, um, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So really, my goal with this session, it's more like an information session where, just going to share with you some of the key knowledge and skill requirements for success in the field of corporate instructional design. And I'm focusing more on corporate because that's where I've spent my entire career. So, and I'll just, you know, share with you a little bit about my journey. So, all right. Um, just to share with you a little bit about myself. So I currently work as a master instructional designer and trainer for a large biopharmaceutical company, uh, and my background is in biotechnology with a concentration in regulatory affairs. That's actually how I got into the industry. I've spent my entire 17-year career working within the biotech industry for, small startup biotech companies to, large biotech organizations. And my role, I started out actually not in learning and development, started out as a manufacturing technician. So I was like on the shop floor, the manufacturing environment. And back in 2011, by what I like to call a divine redirection, I found myself in um, learning and development. And I've been in that space ever since. So it's been, what, 12 years now. And I've had the privilege of, working for a few biotech companies within the capacity of a learning and development professional, mostly as an instructional designer, as a trainer and facilitator, as well as a learning management system expert as well. I am certified through ATD in the Certified Professional in Talent Development. Some of you might be familiar with that. And so, what I'm going to be sharing with you today is really, based off of my experience, some of the knowledge and skills that I've had to acquire along the way, as well as, my expertise in this field. Now, like I said, I've spent the last 12 years, in the learning and development space. And so, about probably about a year and a half ago, I decided, you know what, it's time to really start to give back to the learning and development community. And I do that through a platform called Corporate Instructional Design Mastery Institute. The reason why I feel like this conference has been, I have to say, been very, very, I have to call it a blessing, really, is because when I actually had to take stock of everywhere I've worked since I actually got into learning and development over the last 12 years. And I realized that in all of those organizations, I've had the privilege of being a part of a small learning and development group, right? And in each one of those groups, with probably the exception of one or two of them, um, I'm actually the only person that looks like me in those groups. And so I think this kind of platform and this kind of conference is great because we empower one another, we support each other, and we also help those who are also trying to get into the field as well. So I think this is really an amazing opportunity. But in one of those organizations, I actually met a gentleman who goes by the name of Tyron. He's a very active member of our Black and Learning and Development community, and he shared with me a learning resource that really changed. Um, I would say really set me on the path to where I am today. because it was, he came in, joined the organization at the time as my senior, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to learn from this guy, and that's what I did. So it really, really helped to I got that support and kind of just set me on the right trajectory in my learning and development journey. So having said that, I think what's going on here in this conference is so vital, so important, and uh, so great. All right. So I apologize. Can you guys? Oh, you guys cannot see my
Ade,
screen.
we cannot see the
Okay.
screen.
Okay. Yeah. So let me do that again. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to try to share again. So share. All right. Let's try this one more time. Okay. All right. So it should be coming up, I believe. Can you guys see it now or
No,
no?
not yet.
Still not yet. Okay. All right. Huh. That's strange. Okay. Okay. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and why don't we share directly from, let's share the entire screen then. How's this?
Yep, much better.
Much better. Okay, great. I apologize about that. Okay, I've been yapping for about a few minutes there. Okay, but anyway, so yeah, just I guess I really just wanted to just make a comment about how great this conference has been and how impactful I think it would be for so many people. I've been a part of a few sessions and I've been learning a lot. All right, so let's jump right into it. Today, I want to just quickly talk about what are those knowledge and skill requirements. What are those important things that us as instructional designers and e-learning developers, or that work in a corporate learning and development space, what are those skills that are important for success in our role? So again, like I said, I'm going to be sharing based off of my experience. A lot of these skills I had to kind of pick up along the way, and they came about by, I got uh, faced with a task that I needed to complete. And I realized, hey, you know what? I need to gain the knowledge and the skills in order to complete this task. So, I had to learn that way. So a lot of them, that's actually how I, you know, picked them up. All right. When it comes to knowledge and skill requirements, especially for those who are trying to break into the field, I always like to say, hey, start off by identifying, take this three-step approach, right? Start off by identifying what are those required knowledge and skills, right? And make a list of those things, and then assess yourself. Where do you stand against all of those required knowledge and skills? And then, once you've identified your gaps, then you want to fill those gaps with training, practice, and uh, upskilling, right? So, what's the very first thing that's important? And the first thing that the first skill that I believe is very important for us as instructional designers is learning how corporate learning and development initiatives aligns with corporate strategic plan. And so when I say corporate strategic plan, what do I mean? What do I mean by that? So a company's vision, mission, goals, and objectives are often collectively referred to as the organization's strategic plan, right? The reason why this is important, at least for me, I really got to learn this after I, got into the field and started working. I found that it was very important for me to always be able to tie what I'm doing and the projects that I'm working on to the goals and objectives of the organization. And I think that's really how we, as learning and development professionals, can truly present ourselves as business partners, right? And if we can make that connection between the project that we're doing to um, what the company is trying to achieve, right? So, what do I mean by this? If we're talking vision, we're talking about the big picture of what the company wants to achieve, right? So, here's an example. A company might say, "Hey, we want to be a vibrant and successful family dairy business, right? That's their vision, right? Their mission would be a statement of how the company will achieve that vision. Okay. And the strategy would be a statement of how the company will use that mission to achieve its vision. All right. So they might say, hey, okay, our strategies, we want to make products more affordable than our rivals, right? Or they want to boost income by 20% yearly over the next 5 years. So just some examples there. And then we look at the business goals and the business objectives. So your goals would be a statement of what the company wants to achieve, right? And the objectives would be your key business objectives, what the company wants to achieve and by when. So an example would be they want to increase sales volume by 20% in the next 12 months. And maybe they want to do that by launching a new product, right? Specific initiatives, of course, would have to come from all of these, right? Maybe the marketing department might have to launch a marketing strategy to increase, sales, or something of that nature. But corporate learning and development, of course, needs to have a part to play in that strategy as well. And so maybe corporate learning and development organization might say, hey, we will implement new training programs to teach our sales reps on how to, better sell this new product, or how, we'll launch a new training program to teach our manufacturing technicians on how to make this new product, right? So corporate learning and development definitely needs to have their own strategy. And so, of course, us as instructional designers, whenever we're working on these projects, we understand where it's coming from and we're able to tie it back to the business goals and objectives. So I found that, that understanding that connection has, been a really a huge game changer for me in my career. So almost every project I'm working on, I always have to start from, okay, how does this connect back to organizational goals and objectives, right? So just wanted to point that out. That's really the first thing I think is very important to keep in mind. And then, of course, the next thing I would say is to, particularly for those of you that are maybe just trying to break into the field, learn about adult learning theories, right? What are these, right? So your adult learning theories are essentially principles that describe how adults learn, and they focus on the unique characteristics and the needs of adult learners, right? So learn what they are, learn why they're important, learn how do you apply them um, in making decisions when creating learning solutions, right? There are lots of them, of course. My favorites have been, Malcolm Knowles' adult learning, or andragogy, right? And experiential learning. So just to kind of give an example, of course, so with experiential learning theory, right, it's all about learning through hands-on or real-world experience, right? And so it suggests that we learn best when we actively engage in something, right? And then we reflect on what happened. We think about what we learned, and then we, try it out again in a new way, right? So, and then the cycle kind of keeps repeating itself. So as a designer, if I'm applying that theory, I have to think to myself about how can I make this learning solution? How can I simulate maybe a real world situation in a safe learning environment, right? And so that would be an example of how I would apply that, right? So um, what I found is that if you have knowledge and understanding of some of these adult learning theories, it can really shape your mindset and how you make decisions about the learning solutions that you develop, right? So that's that is another one. Let me try to make sure that I can see my chat. Sorry guys. Okay, there you go. Cool. Awesome. All right. Okay. So moving on, the next thing is, of course, to learn about instructional design models and processes. This is another skill or that I believe is very vital, of course, for instructional designers, right? These are systematic approaches to designing and developing instructional materials, right? They provide a structure for creating effective learning experiences, right? And we're, probably familiar with some of these. The Ade model is, of course, very popular, right? Um, Analysis, design, development, implementation, evaluation. So, hey, I still use the Addy model. I still follow it. It's not a lot of people say, hey, it's too, it's too linear, but you can make it agile as well if you want. But of course, there are agile instructional design models like SAM and Llama as well. And then, learn about other instructional design models. So when it comes to evaluating the effectiveness of your learning solutions, right, Kirkpatrick's levels of evaluation is a great one, right? So definitely understand, um, you know, how to, understand, of course, what it is and how do you apply it to evaluating the effectiveness of learning solutions. One thing that I found when it comes to evaluating effectiveness of learning solutions is many organizations are really good about the level one and the level two evaluations. So, getting feedback from the learners at the end of the course, that's pretty easy to do, right? Um, what they do with that information is another thing, right? Or even if, or do they even review the information and make decisions based off of the outcomes of those survey results, right? So that's another thing. We're pretty good about assessing people, right? Quizzing them and doing all of those things. We're pretty good about that. But I think where many organizations just start to fall off is when it comes to assessing whether or not there's been a transfer of that knowledge and skill back on the job, right? And also the impact of the training on the outcomes of the results that we initially set out to achieve by creating this training. And let's not even talk about return on investment, right? So type in the chat. Let me know. I'm just curious, right? When it comes to evaluating, the effectiveness of learning solutions, what are you guys doing? Do you in your organization, do you are you say you're pretty good at evaluating on all four levels, right? Or would you say, hey, we just do just level one and level two? So just curious. Why don't you type in the chat? Let me know if this is something that you can say, hey, we're pretty, our organization, we're pretty solid when it comes to evaluating effectiveness of learning solutions. So I'm looking in the chat to see if I can see any comments. Yeah, but go ahead. Feel free to share if that's something that you got that you would say, hey, you're pretty good at doing. All right, but so that's another thing. All right. So CR says level one and two consistently, very rarely level three and four. Okay, good. There you go. So and I think that's you're not alone in that situation. I would say many organizations are kind of like in the same boat. Pretty good at doing level one and two, but then your level three and four, you know, not so good. All right, good. Um, so this is just a few years ago. The ATD, they released a white paper, and they had surveyed over about 1,300, close to 1,400 learning or talent development professionals. And one of the questions they asked them was, how often do you use the following models in your designs? And these are the responses, right? So a lot of people a lot of people still use the Addy model, right? Again, this white paper was from back in 2015, so that was definitely a few years ago. I don't think they've done a similar one, of late, but it's pretty interesting to see that even as far as back then, this is what these are the responses that that they got. Addie's right at the top of the list. And I imagine if they were to do it again today, I believe that Addie would probably still be number one, right? And uh, uh, so, but just wanted, I thought, that was pretty interesting to see, so I wanted to share that. Of course, so the next thing, of course, another essential skill for instructional designers is the ability to conduct the training needs analysis, right? So, um, well, I believe that it is important to actually do this with almost every project that warrants conducting a thorough training needs analysis. So, really understanding what steps are involved in conducting a training needs analysis, knowing how to handle sponsor and stakeholder interviews, knowing how to, gather data using a variety of methods, how to analyze, report, and present those data findings, and how to actually, I think the most important is how do you know, use that information to make recommendations for appropriate learning solutions. That is probably the biggest part of that. And Also being able to, complete a job or task analysis as needed. For this one, so I would say I work in an industry where we're very heavy on standard operating procedures, right? So you can imagine, biopharmaceutical companies were making, drug products that have to go into people. And so there are procedures that have to be in place that must be followed to the letter in order for people to be able to perform their jobs the right way. So, um, a job or task analysis pretty much entails identifying what are those tasks that need to be completed um, in that particular job or in that particular process or role. So identifying what that is. So I would say this is another essential skill that instructional designers we need to have. Um, the next thing, of course, is we need this is another essential skill is how to design effective learning solutions, right? So, and I know it looks like, of course, I'm going through through the steps of the ADDIE model, and yes, but these are things that it's very important that we have to really think about what happens here, right? What happens if when I'm actually designing a learning solution? So, one, being able to clearly identify the learning outcomes. What are those learning outcomes, right? Being able to, clearly write effective learning objectives, right? Um, I always like to describe learning objectives as the destination, right? That's where we want to get the learners to, right? And everything else in your design is how you get them there, right? So, instructional strategies and methods or activities that you have to design, the content, the sequencing of the topics, the structure, and all of that, are almost like the vehicles that will get the learners to that destination, right? So, these skills are very important when we're talking about designing effective learning solutions. So, also, how do we collaborate with our subject matter experts to elicit course content from them? That's also very important. So, and also, of course, creating visual representation of learning solutions, such as how do you create storyboards? We don't necessarily need to create a storyboard for every single uh, project, but in many cases they may be required. All right. So, I want to quickly, just before I move forward, I want to quickly launch this poll, and I would really appreciate if everyone can just respond by engaging with this poll. So let me go ahead and publish it. I'm really just curious to know. Okay, so let's publish that. All right, so just really curious to know, um, as an instructional designer, which of these tasks would you say you spend the most time doing? Okay. See, conducting a needs assessment. All right. Looks like designing a curriculum program or learning solution is in the lead. It's actually very interesting because I was thinking it would be development of learning solutions because, you know, for me, I would say that's probably one that tends to take the most time is, so but of course, I guess if if you spend a considerable amount of time designing the solution, then developing and creating the materials shouldn't be that hard. Okay. All right. Great. Great. Awesome. That was very insightful. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. All right. Um, when it comes to developing instructional materials, that's of course another skill that corporate instructional designers need to master. Right. We need to we need to understand how to collaborate with subject matter experts, how to work with them to develop these materials. Right. Not only to analyze or design the materials, but also how do we work with them to develop these materials, right? So that would, of course, involve, creating the materials, going through a cycle of review, collecting feedback, and of course, incorporating their feedback. And this can, of course, go through a number of different iterations, right? Depending on what process or framework or instructional design process you're following to create these learning solutions. And then, of course, the actual development itself, the actual development of the materials is what is part of what we do as instructional designers, right? So if it's for an in-person instructor led, of course, you have to create the slides, you have to create the materials, you have to create the facilitators guides, and and all of the necessary resources that the learner would use, right, in that in-person instructor led training. If it's a virtual instructor-led training, we know, of course, we have to create materials for that as well. But of course, we do have to, incorporate additional virtual, engagement and collaboration tools as well. So I really loved how one of the speakers put it this morning about, when you're designing for virtual instructor led training, you want to almost think about touch points, right? So you want to think about, uh, I think it was Darren that was giving the presentation, talked about, a low touch point, maybe having people engage in the chat, and then maybe a medium touch point, which is maybe a poll, and then maybe a high touch point would be kind of like a breakout room. So I thought that was a really good way to put it. So, but these are things that we would, as instructional designers, we would have to think about, um, you know, how do we bring that into the learning solutions that we are developing, right? So that's another skill that I would say is very essential. Knowing how to come up with these ideas and how to use these different tools to make the learning not only engaging but also helping the learners to meet those objectives. And then, of course, we've got our self-paced e-learning. As instructional designers, this is another important skill. I would say, of course, you know, many instructional designers, at least, in my case, I'm kind of like a jack of all trades type of instructional designer. So I do, I not only manage my own projects, but I also am responsible for, you know, um, you know, building the materials themselves. There are some instructional designers that are just purely project managers, and someone else does the development work, right? So I do my own development work, and so being able to being able to know how to use these. how to create these types of learning solutions is very important, right? So, how to use storyline, how to use Captivate to create e-learning, engaging and interactive e-learning. I had to learn how to apply visual and graphic design using the Adobe Creative Cloud suite of apps, and that was something that I intentionally dedicated time to learning. I had to learn how to use, Photoshop at a very minimal level, right? Not a guru at Photoshop or anything, but I had to know how to just, use that tool. I had to learn how to use Illustrator to, if I needed to work with vector files, I had to learn how to use the software to do that, right? And also creating multimedia assets. That's another essential skill for, instructional designers and e-learning developers. Video editing is something that's required a lot these days, right? So, being able to create and edit video using video editing tools. So I had to learn how to use Premiere Pro, and I've been using Premiere Pro for a few years now. um, Also how to edit audio, right? These are hard technical skills that you'll be required to learn how to you know uh, how to use, right? So animated videos as well, that's also common now. It's becoming very popular, right? Being able to, um, many organizations find value in creating these types of assets for their audience, right? Because they feel like it keeps them engaged. So if you know how to use these tools, then that's a plus. All right. So, and also blended learning. Of course, blended learning is a combination of your self-paced and, your either your virtual instructor led or your in-person instructor led. And so I think for this is probably what's more important is knowing when to say the recommendation is to create a blended learning solution. So know when to recommend a blended learning solution as opposed to just a self-paced only or an instructor-led only type of solution. All right. So another quick question I want to ask you guys, and if you can be kind enough to just type in the chat, what sort of what type of learning solution would you say you find yourself creating the most? Would you say it's self-paced um, e-learnings, or would you say it's in-person instructor-led, or would you say it's virtual instructor-led, or would you say it's blended? Right. So just curious, type in the chat which type of learning solution. Okay. Great. Elizabeth says blended. All right, good. Yeah, blended is definitely I kind of feel like blended gives a much more robust learning experience for the learner, right? Because you have them review some content before they show up for the training, and then you engage in discussions. So good. Okay, awesome, awesome. Okay, Sean says VILT and self-paced. Okay, good. Ciara says blended. Venus says blended. All right, Abigail says VILT. Tara says blended, blended. So I see a lot of blended here. All right, self-paced. Good. Yeah. So awesome, awesome. Yeah, I think so probably part of the you know one of the important skills of an instructional designer is just knowing when to recommend which one, right? And you've got to look at a few factors when you're deciding which you know which ones to recommend. What are some of the factors that you guys um, consider in helping you to make those decisions? What are some of the factors? I imagine you probably would look at the geographical location of the audience, right? Where the audience located, right? If you work for a global, thank you. Yep. Rachel says location of the learners. Yep. Um, Elizabeth says the audience, of course. Yeah. So yeah, you really got to look at, the geographical location of the audience. You have to consider um, a few other things as well, right? So the content type, good. the time available. That's actually that's a big one. Thank you, Abigail. The time available for actually learning, right? Do people have, do they have the time to be pulled into uh, a room for hours, um, you know, to complete this training? If we can deliver the same training in a self-paced format, and they would still get the same um, knowledge, the same skills. If we did it that way, then that might just be a better approach. So part of our responsibilities as instructional designers is just knowing when to recommend which um, uh, learning delivery method. Okay, so great, thank you for that. All right, another very important skill I would say is just being able to deploy these learning solutions with a learning management system. Again, I'm a jack of all trade type of instructional designer, so I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty in an LMS, so I can go in there, upload the content, assign the content to those who need it. So I actually enjoy doing that as well, because I want to see the process through. So um, so that's another skill that I think is important. And even if I know many organizations have a dedicated learning management system administrator that's responsible for doing these things, right? And even if you have that, just having a for yourself an understanding and a knowledge of how your learning management system works, um, and how you can use it to deploy the learning solutions, I think it's very important. um, and then of course we talked about evaluating the effectiveness of our learning programs. That's another skill that um, us as instructional designers we need to be very, very good at. Okay. All right, let's move forward. Also, very important is project management. So, basic project management skills for instructional designers. I think it's super important because you're actually, you're managing projects, no matter how small or how big it is. It is still a project, right? So, you need to know you know, how to use either your traditional, your agile project management methodologies to, create these learning solutions. How do you, create project plans and schedules, making sure that, the right people are, involved in the project, making sure that, you know, uh, you have the necessary resources that you need for the project to be successfully completed. So I think it's important to have some basic project management skills if you're going to be successful as an instructional designer in corporate. And then, of course, technical writing is a big one, because I found, I don't know who else, agrees with this, but when I'm developing learning solutions, I find myself doing a lot of writing. And because the the SMEs might give you, they might just give you some content that they have, and then you're gonna have to work with them to gather maybe some additional information, and then you really have to, you know, um, put that information or present that content in a very clear and concise manner, for the learner. And in so doing, you're going to have to do some technical writing. So I would say technical writing skills is a big one. Who else agrees with that? Give me a thumbs up if you agree that for sure you need technical writing skills. Okay, good. Awesome. Fantastic. Good. Thank you for that. And then soft skills. These are also super important, right? You're working with people, so yes, we're going to need, interpersonal skills, time management skills. We need, you know, excellent analytical skills, right? So especially when you're doing your training needs analysis, right? You're going to need to be able to be very analytical. Excellent writing skills, like we just mentioned, great communication skills, being a lifelong learner. um, I actually enjoy this part about my job because of course, as you know, as instructional designers, we're rarely the experts on the solutions that we are developing for, and so it really just allows me to be able to learn from these experts, and um, as a lifelong learner, and if you're curious, if you're a curious type of person, you would always want to go out and get a little bit more information about what this topic is, what this means, because if you can understand it, then very likely the learners would be able to understand it as well. So I would say, and of course, great listening skills. Right. A lot of times, especially in the analysis phase, we're listening to stakeholders, SMEs, kind of talk about some of the problems that they're experiencing and so on. And so having these great listening skills, being able to communicate effectively with you know the people that we're working with, I think it's super important. Um, so these are this is another question that was asked in that in that survey that ATD conducted many years ago. They asked, how important are the following skills to instructional design? And at the very top, they said skill to not only listen, but also synthesize what's being said, right? So you're not just listening, but you're also being able to, being able to synthesize what they're saying, being able to kind of deduce important points from what they're saying. Excellent analytical skills, knowledge of instructional design principles, practices, and adult learning theory, um, organization, prioritization, time management, and so on. So I thought this was a pretty good list of skills, and very interesting that a lot of these are soft skills as well. Okay. All right. So of course, once you are, once you've, come up with that list, and we just, went through a whole bunch of different skills just now. And again, like I said, I'm still, getting better at some of those skills. I continue to learn. I continue to improve myself, and but it's important to assess yourself against these required skills. And one thing that can probably help with that is if you have like a self assessment checklist, right? So I created this self assessment checklist, and I'll share. I'll tell you in a little bit how you can get access to this. Oh, okay, I think I see that that's been posted in the chat. Great. So if you click on that link, this you can I can email you this self-assessment checklist, but it basically provides a list of all of these skills that we've been talking about, and then you can then kind of look through each one and assess where you stand, against each one of those. So just a little resource that some of you might find helpful. All right, and that's my little Oprah spiel. Okay, so how Oprah goes, you get a checklist. No, sorry, she says you get a car, you get a car. All right, yeah. So that's my own little Oprah moment. All right. So if you want a copy of that, click on the link, and then I'll make sure you get that email to you. Okay. And of course, finally, once you've identified your gaps, then the next thing is, go ahead and start, training, start learning. Focus on the ones that you focus on the skills that you do not have, right? Take online courses, sign up for academies, sign up for a university or degree program, join ATD. I love ATD. I've been a member for many years. So, it's a great organization. So you can join, join communities as well, where you can, where you can learn from others that have been in the field for a long time. Okay. All right. So that is it. And, so just finally, I would say for anyone that's interested, and you want to connect with me, I think my LinkedIn link is in the chat. Like I said, I run a corporate instructional design mastery program where I teach instructional design and some of these other topics that I mentioned. So if you're interested in, finding out more about that, you can visit corporateidmastery.com and get more information on that. All right. Great. And I think that was exactly 45 minutes. Okay, good. So time for questions. All right. Okay, great. Let's see. Question here. Being an ID is becoming costly due to the required skills associated with the role. Do you have any recommendation on cost effective or free trainings for those that want to continue to gain skills such as technical writing? I would actually say, for skills like that, I would say check out LinkedIn Learning. Technical, LinkedIn Learning is what, maybe I think like 30 something bucks a month, something like that. Or I think you can even purchase like a single course. Um, I would recommend that. I would look for online, online courses like that as well that kind of just focus on those. I think YouTube videos are great, but not as structured. So I would say look for a structured course that has been, designed and put in place to help you learn that topic. All right. So next question is, as an administrator at the K through 12 level of education, looking to transition to the corporate sector after completing the assessment checklist, do you have any recommendations? Yes. So I would say, really the checklist is to help you assess where you stand, right? It's to help you, say, okay, well, I have these skills. I know I don't have these, but I need them. So let me focus on these skills that I need, right? So it's really just to help you, identify your gaps. And then the next step would just be to, you know, close those gaps by, again, sign up for courses. Um, you know, for anyone that's interested in, the Corporate Instructional Design Mastery Program, you can reach out to me. And, certainly, it's a program that's been designed to help you not only gain the skills, but to also help you build a portfolio that you can present. So, yeah, absolutely. So I would say that would be next step. Um, all right. So some really good tips here in the chat as well. Whitney says you can also access LinkedIn courses for free from most public libraries in the US. Yes, absolutely. Yes, totally agree with that. Awesome, awesome. Great. Are those all our questions? Any other questions? All right. Well, if there are no more questions, I want to say thank you guys for attending. I believe that this, you know, this session has been helpful. So, well, thank you guys for attending. All right. So, if you want to connect with me, please, you know, connect with me on LinkedIn or check out corporateidmastery.com and you can connect with me that way as well. All right. Great. Well, thank you guys. And I will catch you guys later.